I'm Michelle Ashton and I'm on Equity's Young Members Committee. And today I'm going to be talking about child performers with Matt Hood. Hello.
Hi there.
So, Matt, could you just briefly tell us a little bit about your role at Equity and what you do?
Thanks, Joe. So my name is Matt Hood, as you said. I'm one of the two deputies for the General Secretary here at Equity. I look after the membership side of what the union does, so not the industrial work, the negotiations, but making sure that the services that we provide for members all work correctly, making sure that the finances run properly, and making sure that people can join and make the most of their membership.
Okay, great. So, I'm right in thinking you've done quite a bit of work in terms of child performers and equity.
Yes, I mean, I've been involved with child performers for a while since we lowered the age for child performer members down to the age of 10, which we did about 10 years ago. And I've had a keen interest in making sure that child members can join us and that they get the best out of their membership as well.
Okay. Um, so because you've been doing this for quite a while, do you think the way that social media is being used for casting, do you think that's changed the way that child performers get work?
I mean, social media has definitely had a huge impact on members in general and sourcing work. I mean, those traditional routes through spotlights a lot of the time are becoming more open, which is great for access. It means that there is more chance for people to get cast in productions who aren't perhaps part of those that are in the know. It gives the ability to expand from our business being run on just who it is that you know to a more egalitarian, more merit-based society, a more merit-based industry, which is good news. But it comes with plenty of pitfalls, as you can imagine. The most obvious is you just don't know who's behind a lot of these online social media castings. And I think the first thing that people need to be wary of is who are the people that are posting these jobs. Do research into working out whether these people are bona fide casting professionals. Do they belong to one of the two main casting bodies here in the UK, the Casting Directors Guild or the Casting Directors Association? Do they have a history of actually casting in real productions? And sometimes that can be quite difficult if it's television commercials. It's easy to find out who's cast, big budget movies, large TV or theatre, but commercials by their very nature kind of come and go pretty quickly. So there is unfortunately more homework to be done, I think, for people who see social media castings or castings online in general as to what is the veracity of those casting opportunities, and giving the union a call to ask us to say, I've seen this, is this person real, is this actually an equity production? We're always happy to help. Unfortunately, the old adage, if it's too good to be true, it's too bad to be true, still applies. Most film and television in this country, around 99%, is made on equity agreements. So if you see somebody saying, here is a big budget feature film, and it says under it non-union, or here is an HBO series and it says under it non-union, it's almost certainly a scam. Those productions do not shoot on non-union contracts in the UK.
Yeah, and I think even because I saw a casting for I think they wanted a 10-year-old or something from a well-known casting director, and they actually at the bottom of the casting call put their data protection policy and safeguarding policy at the bottom of that. So I think that's another thing to look out for.
I mean, in general, the history of kind of casting minors has been more behind closed doors for safeguarding reasons, happening between producers and casting directors and the kind of schools, the established schools that train child performers in particular, because with all parties knowing exactly who they are in the process, the ability to make sure there was nobody coming into that chain who was suspect obviously was safeguarded. As things have become more democratized and more liberalized, yes, there's more opportunity, but with opportunity comes, unfortunately, opportunity to scam people or to have other malevolent intentions. So, it really is important that child performers and their parents and guardians are on guard if something comes to them through that sort of avenue.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and with that, because I've worked at quite a lot of stage schools, and opportunities to do sometimes come through there. But there are also some stage schools that are run by casting directors. So um, it's one of those things where you wonder, is that an ethical thing for them to do? Or, is there anything to prevent potential bias towards their own clients? And some of them are also agents too. And do you have any advice really for parents who might feel pressured into choosing those particular schools in order to get cast? Or do you think it doesn't matter so much?
I mean, stage schools and even schools for older young adults have always tended to have their agencies attached to them, and that is generally thought to be a good thing. That these are people who have trained the children and young performers in their craft, and they're best able to pitch them for work. And I think that sector is quite well established and quite well regarded. The biggest issue we have is production companies having a tie-up with talent agents, where the actual payer, the engager, has its own agency and it puts its own clients into its own productions, and that
And then presumably takes commission on their own contracts.
Takes commission, but also there's no chance of getting a look in there, and you will see that if you spot quite well-known talent companies now moving into the producers, and that certainly is a concern. What you're talking about is a slightly grey area of casting directors who are the people who are hired to find talent, and schools and agencies. And what should be quite clear is there's no double dipping on the way in which people earn their money in that chain. But if you are a casting director being paid by a producer to find you talent, you cannot be then taking commission off the talent that you find as well. And certainly that is something I think for people to be wary of, that if somebody is being hired as a casting professional and is taking a commission off the talent, that is certainly a dubious practice. And that I think is a thing to look out for. If they're casting people but not charging you, they're not taking money from both clients, then whilst it might not be the most ethical thing, at least the financial setup is as good as it could be in those circumstances.
Yeah, because it can be really difficult for parents to tell things as well. So I'm just going to stop for a second. I keep hearing doodly doo. Is that my computer or your computer? I don't know what. Is it? Is it your email coming through?
Yeah. So I can turn the sound off without turning you off as well. That's the problem.
Yeah. Well, we'll just try and power through it.
Sorry.
It's fine.
Stop sending me emails. That would be so much more helpful.
You're just very, very busy. That's how hard you're working.
What can I say?
Yeah, so what was I saying? Oh yeah, because it can be really hard for parents to tell these things, especially if they're not part of the industry themselves. My cousin was approached when she was about 3 or something, about a child modelling agency, an acting agency, and my auntie had me to talk to about it, and it's one of those where come for a free test shoot and then we'll try and charge you lots and lots of money for photos. So because I know Equity's done a lot to stamp out talent agencies who trying to charge illegal joining fees, because you can't do that. That's illegal. It's got to be on the commission of work that you gain. But this particular one was trying to charge like £500 for photos and a website fee, for you to appear on the website. So what do you think parents can do when they're looking for new representation, and what should they be looking out for?
I think the key thing for everybody in our industry to remember is the relationship that performers have with their agent. And quite simply, performers hire an agent to perform a service for them. So the agent is not hiring you. And I think particularly with child performers, there's that misunderstanding about that relationship, that somehow you have been selected by an agency, and there's a certain amount of gratitude that comes with that arrangement. Well, that isn't the case. You are hiring an agent to represent your child or yourself to find you work, and they earn their money by delivering that service of finding work. Now, there are ways in which under UK legislation some fees can be recouped by an agency which are legitimate. if you have to have photos printed, well, you can pay, you can ask the client to pay for the cost of those photos, but it's at cost. It's not a chargeable endeavor by which you can make profit. So it costs you 30 quid to get your headshots printed down at Boots, then 30 quid is what you get charged, and that's fine. Website fees, there is a nominal fee to host web pages, but it is very nominal. And if someone's saying it's 500 quid a year to go on my website, that is nowhere near related to the actual costs of that web entry. I mean, if it costs you 5 quid to put somebody up on a website, frankly, I think you're still being overcharged. So there are legitimate costs under law. It'd be great if they were. It would make things much easier to give somebody a blanket piece of advice and say, no, you can't pay anything up front. But there are legitimate fees which an agent can charge their clients. But if you remember, you're hiring that agency, you don't like what they're doing, you've got the ability to walk away from that relationship and say, I'm going to go and engage a different agent who's going to provide me a better service, get myself better work from those opportunities. And if you remember as a performer that you are the person hiring them, and the person therefore in charge of that relationship, that's a useful way to conceive of it.
Yeah, because I think there can be quite, a lot of flattery into, because I remember when I was first starting out, when I first left drama school and just getting that bit of interest, it is exciting. It is, and you start to think, oh, but, if I turn this person down, then, will I ever get another opportunity? But, I found that actually they do come along, you may have to wait a little while, but you'll find the right match eventually.
There's always in our industry this fear, I think, of saying no to people, and wondering what the consequences would be. Well, if you say no to somebody, for example, who is not going to pay you to do a piece of work, maybe they will not pay you to do some work again in the future. But the people who do pay you properly to do that work are not going to be influenced by the fact you're turned down because of your own self-respect and the value of your own worth doing free work for somebody else. So, yeah, sometimes producers, perhaps agents, will over egg, what it means to reject them, but it's usually overstated.
Yeah, it's interesting, trying to look into this because I'm kind of coming at it from three perspectives in that as because I do acting and voice coaching, so I work with quite a lot of young people. And I'm in a cooperative agency, so we don't represent children, but we do sometimes put the children of our clients forward. My daughter and myself have just gone in for something today, and so obviously as a mum, also try. I mean, my daughter, I've never pressure her into going into it in any way because I know how hard it is. But she already kind of is showing the signs of like acting things out to herself and pretending she's got a sock puppet on and things like that. But one of the kind of minefields of trying to work with a child is, well, I mean, there's licensing is a bit of a nightmare because it's quite inconsistent across local education authorities in terms of, how much time a child can have off school or how quickly the turnaround is. Because like, I've sometimes seen castings that want a license turnaround done in 7 days, or they've called for kids on an open license, which isn't a thing. Like, that's not even legally a thing. But a lot of LEAs state they have a 30-day turnaround. So, is there anything that can be done about addressing that inconsistency so that kids can have the same sort of opportunities no matter where they live?
I mean, it's one of those classic postcode lotteries, the licensing system for children in this country at the moment.
Yeah.
The biggest issue, I think, is that licensing is still misconceived. It's an old hangover. It's an anti-truancy measure. Is what child licensing at the moment is. Across not just entertainment but other industries. It's designed to make schools accountable for the time off education that children have. And it's not designed primarily to safeguard children in the workplace.
Yeah.
And I think there needs to be, a shift of emphasis in the way that works. Some local authorities do very good at very good diligent work on the licensing and good follow-up as well in terms of safeguarding and visiting children's workplaces. Others who turn it around quite quickly. Parents are usually very happy because that's brilliant. You know, the work that the licenses come through and their
Hey,
child
we can do that commercial.
end up on set on Saturday. But it's not, you know, it's not really totally fit for purpose, the licensing system at the moment. Now there's a body called the National Network for Children in Employment and Entertainment, the NNCEE, which Equity has been involved with over the years as well. It's a good online resource for people who have children looking to work in the industry. They have some things on their website like guidance for how to complete the licensing application forms in a standard way, and also guidance on what the questions actually are on the forms, as well as standard forms examples as well. So, I mean, that's one of the best resources, I think, for parents and for producers who are looking to engage children is the NNCE, because whilst I don't think standardized approach from local authorities is on the cards at the moment, most local authorities have participated with the NNCE and through that network have shared experience about how to grant and deal with licenses. But one of the biggest issues is the number of personnel in each local authority's licensing department.
Yeah.
You know, one person who's part-time, some who are based around film and TV studios have, you know, half a dozen or more who are there to make sure that you know that people can get licensed quickly. And there are a lot of, you know, falsehoods like the open license, which you know doesn't exist, that are perpetuated. And I think the NNCE's website is the best place to kind of bust some of those myths as well.
Okay, great. One age group that is really difficult to kind of address in that sense is so young people who are like just out of licensing, so that 15 to 17, because you know you can, if your birthday's in August, you leave school in June and you're out of licensing, but you know you are still only 15. So are there any particular safeguarding procedures that are in place for them? Like, are they entitled to ask for a chaperone, or are they just going to be treated as an adult?
I mean, we've just concluded a new agreement with PACT, which is the Producers Alliance for Cinema and Television, for the engagement of minors in feature film production. And there's details on the Equity website. That's you know, within the last week that agreement's been struck for the first time, which guarantees minors 50% of Equity standard rates of pay, which is a first, and also means they also get their share of the back end payment, so royalties that get paid out for DVD sales, for online streaming, for, you know, all those auxiliary uses other than the cinematic release. Now, in that agreement, the definition of a minor is up to school leaving age, and the school leaving age in the UK, despite government's, you know, approach to 17 and 18-year-olds, remains 16. And so the good news is that when you reach 16, you will get paid adult rates within the Equity agreements. You know, so you'll get paid as much as somebody who's 21 or 51. The downside is obviously that those kind of licensing requirements disappear. You know, the statutory obligation to provide chaperones to someone who's above school leaving age is not there. Doesn't mean it can't happen. And you know, it's very much the role of the agency who's engaging the you know, who's putting the child forward for that job, to negotiate those terms with the producer to say, well, actually, we want to make sure this client is safe on set. We think you should be providing a chaperone. And frankly, unless you do, my client is not going to turn up on set, because it would not be a safe environment for a 16-year-old girl in that production. So there isn't an automatic right once you pass school leaving age, but it seems a very sensible thing to do for people who are, you know, under the age of 18, and should be something that's negotiated on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, so it'll kind of depend on the production and the company, and just in terms of what that entails.
And particularly if they're engaging other minors as well. I mean, if they also have people who are 14 and 7 on set, or in the rehearsals for those productions, then, you know, they will have chaperones available. You know, the difficulty I think usually comes where you are the youngest, the only person who's under, you know, 18 on set, and the rest is an adult cast, and you know, the producer hasn't factored in additional responsibility of a chaperone for that reason.
Yeah. So are parents allowed to act as chaperones, or do they have to have a licensed chaperone who's coming in and being paid? Is that?
I mean, parents can act as chaperones, and some parents are licensed chaperones.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are clear conflict of interest issues that come with parents acting as chaperones. Particularly if they have more than one child and only one of those children is their own. It's quite hard for us as parents to, focus on other people's children as much as we focus on our own children when we're given a choice between two children. It's just that easy.
Yeah.
Um, and your priorities are somewhat different as a parent. And frankly, as a parent, you'll find that parental chaperones may be more encouraging of people to relax the rules, to say, "Oh yeah, no, Johnny will do an extra 20 minutes. Don't worry," because the adults have agreed to it. Whereas a licensed chaperone should be saying, "Absolutely no. We need to have a break for lunch, for the teaching in the day that's been allocated for this child." And so I think it is generally safer and better for children to be chaperoned by someone who's independent rather than a parent.
Yeah. No, I would also agree with that. It's most parents are trying to do their best and support their children. But there are some, and having, worked in stage schools, I've dealt with a few who have certain ideas about what their children should be doing, and
Yeah, I
and
mean, there's a stereotype of a stage parent, isn't there? And like most stereotypes, there was like some stereotypes, there is an element of truth to
yeah, there is a little bit.
the stage parent stereotype.
Yeah. So in terms of joining equity, essentially, why? What are the benefits of membership of equity for somebody who's in that 10 to 17 age bracket?
I mean, the benefits of joining a union in general are that collective protection that you get from being part of a union. And if you're working in an industry, you should be part of whatever union represents those workers. Instead, it's about collective protection, which means that we as a union negotiate those terms and conditions for the workforce. And as I say, what we're seeing now is greater engagement with producers on negotiating proper terms and conditions for minors. So this the film and television, the pact film agreement, which is the first one that's come off the list, has just been announced. The pact television, which will cover most independent television productions, will be is in the last stages of negotiation now. In theatre, particularly in the West End, where the agreement is largely that you get paid 50% of the adult rate. Again, the more children who belong to the union, the better those agreements for children are going to be. There's also the individual protections. You don't get paid for a job. You are injured on set. Something happens to you. Your agent doesn't pay the money that they were paid by the producer. Now, all of those things, as a child member of equity, you can get the union's assistance with to make sure that you are being treated properly and paid properly at work. At the end of the day, that's what the union is here for, to ensure your fair treatment and your fair pay for the job that you do. And it's quite unusual. There are a few other workforces where there are as many children who are actively engaged as there are in the entertainment and performing arts, and so it's crucial that those children who are, learn by being a member of the union whilst they're working, that exploitation financially and physically is wrong, and the union is there to back them up. Joining as a child is pretty straightforward. Much like our child rates are 50% of the adult rates, the evidence you need to produce to become a child member is 50% of that of an adult. So by and large, it means showing £250 worth of earnings from our profession. It can be one job, it can be across a number of jobs, or an equity contract, such as the Equity Pact film contract. Or if you happen to be a child member of a sister union like SAG-AFTRA in America, then you can also join with that. And most people join online through the website. And once your date of birth goes in, it will calculate the child rates for you rather than the adult rates. So there isn't a join as a child member kind of link. It's join as a member, but when you put in your date of birth as being, 2009, for example, it will know that you're a child, and will allocate the child rates to you.
Okay, yeah, great, thanks. Because it is really interesting, actually, when you think about it, like, as a trade union, that you know there aren't a lot of other workplaces where you would find people. Certainly, nobody under 16, working and sometimes doing, quite long days, and difficult work. And I think that's one of the things to get across to parents, especially, is that this is work. Like there was a child agent who I saw speak once. She said, "This is the same as sending your child up a chimney 100 years ago." It's not just a bit of fun. It is a job, and you're sending your children out to work.
Yeah, it would be a really strange world if, our kids turned on television and there were no kids on TV.
Yeah, exactly.
And what would that say about our society if children were silenced from screen or from stages? So it makes absolute sense that children are able to work in our industry.
Mm-hmm.
They've got to be able to do so safely, and and the union and the licensing structure is designed to try and make that happen. What I would say is that 10 is our minimum age for child members here in the UK. That's based on the fact that 10 is the age at which there is some capacity to contract. So our relationship is always with the child member, not with the child's parents. And as a union, it has to be directly with the person who is a member, not with the parent. That said, what the law enables a minor to do is to cancel a contract without repercussion. So as a child, you can go, well, I signed that, but I no longer want to abide by it, and that is legally permissible. But
Wow,
yeah, from 10 upwards is the ability for children to join. Fully aware though that there are plenty of children aged 9 or younger who work in our industry, and we take a keen interest in their welfare, but primarily that's the job of the local authorities to safeguard.
yeah. Okay. Well, brilliant. Thank you very much for talking to me today.
Thanks, Michelle.